Hello and welcome to the AI Builders podcast brought to you by Christian Timbers. I am one of your co-hosts, JC Christian, president at Christian Timbers.
Hi, this is Jeff Christian, and welcome to the AI Builders Podcast.
Now we can talk about some of our topics. We have a few things today, one of which is about everything here is going to be about AI transformation end to end. One of the first topics that we wanted to start with was around AI transformation within manufacturing. So when we say AI transformation, maybe just to give a definition to start with, we're typically talking about ways that businesses can radically transform and fundamentally change how they operate and how certain workflows are fundamentally done within their business. So an example would be taking a purely human-driven process and making it software-driven perhaps 20, 30, 40 years ago. The next step might have been using RPA. So instead of having a software but human enabled process, you can have a fully autonomous process, but it's very brittle, it's very static, and you're going to be using companies like UiPath and other automation tools that are for Microsoft or otherwise that work, but only in very highly constrained environments. That's another example of a transformation. And now what we're seeing today is basically using LLMs and application-specific models to do the next level of automation, where you can have very long-running processes with a variety of complexity, with a variety of dynamic inputs and requirements for dynamic outputs, and you can have agentic workflows do those seamlessly end to end.
That's great, JC. And when when you're recruiting, and particularly for manufacturing companies, what are you seeing the biggest demand for to be deploying agentic AI in both physical and digital AI in the manufacturing world?
That's a great question, Jeff. So we're typically seeing companies really separate these two categories. So on one hand, they want an AI leader for factories. And on the other hand, they want an AI leader for back office and purely software facing components of the business. Two very important pieces, but very distinct. So on the manufacturing side, they're doing everything from looking at sensor data, machine data, and other indicators to determine if the outputs from a given factory line are correct and valid ahead of time. They also are using a variety of data and agentic workflows around predicting when a machine is going to break. There have been some issues in the past with machines breaking way too much and companies not being able to predict those well enough, and they lose a ton of money from downtime. But you also get tons of companies that have the opposite issue where they overspend and they're replacing machines, they're replacing parts too frequently, leading to a worse balance sheet and a worse cash position. So what we're seeing the best companies do from a factory and warehouse automation perspective is first and foremost doing defect detection on factory lines, as well as defect and issue detection around the machinery and parts themselves. Now, as it relates to the internal operations of a company outside of the world of atoms in a manufacturing facility, we're seeing lots of companies do the same things across the board. A lot of them are going to rhyme regardless of whether or not it's manufacturing or not. But for some of the things that do matter that are specific to manufacturing, that's going to be supply chain, that's going to be inventory optimization, that's going to be demand forecasting as well. All of these things have a huge impact to bottom line. All of these things are going to affect when a customer receives an item and minimizing that time and the company's ability to pull forward revenue recognition, as well as lower costs along the way. So sales forecasting, inventory management, supply forecasting, and then supply chain risk mitigation and routing and a variety of other components there, I would say, are the most interesting things that are manufacturing specific.
Thank you. And tell me a little bit about what you're looking for. What are the titles of people and leaders that are needed in the manufacturing environment to drive agentic AI?
Great question. So in terms of titles, it's going to depend on the company and who they're reporting to. We've seen certain people report to the CFO, CIO, Chief Strategy Officer, CTO. Really just depends on on what they're looking for and what the exact job requirements are. But the broad titles are going to be chief AI officers, SVPs of AI, maybe globally across the company, but also sometimes segmented across a specific category. Once your company gets to a certain scale, say 3 billion in revenue or so, then you're typically going to have an SVP of AI that is software focused and an SVP of AI that is hardware focused and focused on the manufacturing facilities and manufacturing sites themselves. Jeff, we've had a lot of people talk to us wondering what AI transformation really means. What's going on there? What is it about?
That's a great question, JC. AI native transformation means a lot of things to different companies. It can be client facing, it can be internally facing. Most of the time, what we're seeing and what we're talking about is AI native transformation within the corporate environment. Where it started was with the biggest companies. And where it started within the biggest companies were within the hyperscalers. And this goes back about 2.5 years ago. Almost immediately, you saw companies like Pfizer and United Health getting a very fast start. And they, in many ways, and companies like them have defined what AI native transformation is. AI native transformation is all about driving ROI. So it's the automation using agentic AI in both physical and digital applications to drive ROI. And where we're seeing it surface is when this whole thing started, we started to hear about chief AI officers. We started doing CAIO searches. In my own opinion, most of those were mishires. The reason they were mishires was the fact that they really did not have any experience in agentic deployments, successful ones. They'd never managed teams that are working with large language models. So they were really starting with at the same time that large language models started. And what's happened is that there's now a new definition for what the talent is that's going to drive it. And this is all about talent. So it's the most talent driven transformation we've ever seen. We saw the advent of large language models, and that immediately created a talent war. And it started happening in the frontier model companies themselves. That same talent war is going on the deployment side. And we talk about frontier model companies being at the frontier. There's also the companies that deploy AI at the deployment frontier. JC, what are you seeing when you're out there recruiting? What are some of the jobs that are in the biggest demand? And not about FDEs. Let's talk about this next wave of kind of leadership. You've talked to me about VPs and SVPs of AI that are the ones that are really doing that work and driving these transformations. Give me a sense for what you're looking for there and why companies are benefiting at that level.
Well, it's a pretty easy question to answer, but it's a very important question. So I'm glad you asked it, Jeff. But the basic thing that we look for is somebody who's done the job before. What that means is that we're looking for people that have generated ROI with agentic workflows, not old school RPA or other types of processes, to generate 10 million plus in ROI for their companies. And they we're looking for people that have done that in the specific sectors and specific industries that we're looking to hire into.
That's great. And obviously we work closely together and we're seeing this across many companies. So AI native transformation, what is it? It is basically deploying or applying large language models in multiple settings. It can be client facing. It can also be internally focused. And what we're seeing is, and how it relates to talent, is we're seeing this major transformation occurring now.
So, Jeff, someone with your experience probably has a great answer to this question, given that you've seen more cycles at certain depths that I don't think anybody else has in the world. What is different about the AI transformation compared to other transformations of the past?
Great question, JC. Thank you. What I've seen, and having gone through about 8 transformations, the first one being the transformation to PCs, which most people don't remember, and maybe the most impactful one was the transformation around the emergence of the internet and e-commerce. And there was, at that point, a huge demand for talent. That's where we saw IT consulting companies start to take off in a much bigger way. And the fact that companies, particularly large corporations, didn't know how to deploy that technology. Now, coming back to today, what is this transformation and what makes it different? The most important thing that makes it different is the speed of transformation. The transformations of the past happened over 3 to 5 years. We have already had one or two major transformations in AI. One started with generative AI, and right behind it became agentic AI. What that has done is created this huge vacuum and need for talent that doesn't exist. And one of the indicators of that is we saw compensation levels for the top scientists working with large language models go to a level of stratosphere we have never seen before. It never happened in any of the other past transformations. So there has never been a transformation that is so talent driven as this one. And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to companies? And what does it mean to people in jobs today across all sectors? What it means is that companies have to get the talent that matters. We saw the talent in the frontier model companies go skyrocketing, and that competition is still fierce. Now, what's happened is as this technology has been impacted within corporate America, all of a sudden there's the same demand for the people that are great at deployments, applying this technology. And what we've seen is just an impact on that we've never seen before. So what we saw happen in this transformation is everybody needed a CAIO. And I'm pretty convinced that everyone started with the same JD. Someone wrote a JD for a CAIO about 2.5 years ago, and everybody used the same one. And the problem was that they were just way too strategic and too analytical. And what they ended up doing was just kind of being a vendor connection in some ways to all the IT consulting companies. Now, of course, there were some very good ones hired as well that started building the deployment teams that mattered. But what we're seeing in that impact is that there's a change going on across all companies, and that is for what I would call AI native builder CTOs or AI native builder C-suite leaders. JC, I know that you've recently done a couple of projects like this where there was a change out of a CTO, and mainly because they're very good SaaS CTO, but they really did not have any knowledge about how to deploy large language models in the product suite, and the company needed to get to be much more agentic forward, I'll call it that. Tell me what you're seeing at the C-suite and some of the jobs that are being changed as a result of that.
Sure. I think we're seeing a lot of AI transformation occur at the C-suite right now. Lots of change outs for AI native leaders, one of which is CTOs. Most of these CTOs are brought in because the existing product velocity is simply not there, and they need somebody who can empower the engineering force to move a lot more quickly than they are at this moment in time. Other roles, we're seeing AI native CFOs, AI native CPOs, etc. One of the things that I think is most interesting on the CPO front and head of product front is they're looking for people that can do live prototyping and build different types of products using agents in front of a customer or half an hour before they take a meeting with a customer. These are the types of forward thinking, really AI native people that we're seeing get changed out within the product and technology orgs today.
That's great, and it's excellent insight. So what we're doing is we're seeing that companies are starting to make these changes, and I predict, and what we're seeing, the momentum that's behind this is indicating that actually everybody has to become an AI native builder. And one of the questions people ask, well, what is AI native builder? What is an AI native builder? And what is the importance of an AI native builder, and why are they called that? And so it's our best way of describing uh, someone, a leader in most cases, that has actually impacted the bottom line with ROI. They've either reimagined the tech stack through an agentic lens, they've either created agentic based products and solutions that are being delivered successfully in the market to their customers, or it can mean that they are actually deploying large language models and agentic AI to create ROI internally, so internally facing. And so what's happening is that there are many kind of old school CIOs, CTOs that are what I would call AI fluent, and they were able to keep their jobs for a while, and because they sounded good. But what ended up happening was the street, if it's a public company, started demanding what's the productivity gains that are occurring through agentic AI. And they're asking the board, and the board is asking the CEO, and the CEO is asking who's ever in charge of that, which is usually the CIO, the CTO, could be a chief transformation officer, a chief digital and data officer. They come in many titles. What's going on? They're asking what's going on? What's the impact? Where is it? I'm seeing our competitor reporting numbers of dramatic reductions in cost or increases in revenue acceleration. Where's ours? And that question is only going to be asked probably 3 times before their boss, the CEO in this case, is going to start saying, are they AI native enough? So, or are they getting done what needs to get done? And then we're getting the call to replace them. Yeah, and it's pretty much the same. I don't think I've got a CTO that can make the jump. We're starting to hear, as JC mentioned, we don't have a CFO that can make the jump. The CFO is not going to be able to replace FP&A fast enough, which is one of the first areas for workflow automation within the finance function. And so it's beyond being fluent, it's actually taking agentic AI and moving quick on it. Now, one of the things that I'm going to go into another one. One of the other things that we've seen is how this is impacting IT consulting and this problem that we have at the center of no talent and massive demand. So, JC, I know you are also the co-founder of CT Labs, and you're building and deploying agents to automate complex workflows, and then you've got a sense of what's going on within the IT consulting business. And I think you've seen some of the same things that I've seen is that companies are not able to get traction, particularly with the big four. And as a result, the big four are building up this skill set. And they're finding it mostly in India and Europe for low cost deployment. And what do you see going on there in the hiring in the IT consulting space for this type of talent?
All right, Jeff. So tell us one of the biggest questions people ask us on a consistent basis. What are the hottest jobs you're seeing right now in market?
Thanks, JC. And well, everything's hot. Anybody that has deployed large language models, either for customers or internally, are in massive demand. There is a trend that is going on right now that some people are aware of and others are not aware of, and that's the forward deployed engineer. But there's a massive difference between what some people think are an FDE and the FDEs that are actually making the biggest impact. And that's what's happening across the board is that the demand for this elite, what I would call Palantir or Anthropic grade FDE, has gone into the stratosphere in terms of compensation. And because these are the people that are making the difference. Companies are right now struggling with trying to get work done through IT consulting companies and trying to get deployments done internally. The skill set's not there, and the rub is all about the FDE. Dario knows this. And so if you really want to know what's going on, what is Anthropic doing? And what are the smartest people in the world? What are the actions that they're taking? It tells you a lot. So what happened this spring is, and probably started sometime last year, that Goldman Sachs, HFE, and Blackstone invested 1.5 billion into a company just for FDEs, just for Anthropic. I was talking to the CEO of a major Fortune 100 company that was with Dario and a bunch of other CEOs about a month ago in Europe. And Dario was talking about the fact that nothing's going to happen because companies don't have the ability to deploy. We don't have enough resources, and the big consulting firms don't either. There's a bunch of smaller IT consulting companies, special niche ones that are very good all over the place, but those are hard to resource because there's not enough of them, and everybody's they're overloaded in work. So what happened is, and what's happening in the market is this demand for an FDE. Now, JC, tell us a little bit about what's the compensation for these FDEs, the ones that I'm talking about, the Palantir grade ones, and yeah, tell me what the compensation is.
Yes, we're seeing compensation packages range anywhere from $800,000 total compensation all the way to 1.5 million for these people that are ex-Palantir, ex-Anthropic, and have true agentic frontier experience.
Yeah, I've heard the same numbers and a little bit more granularity there. So that's about the average. 800 to 1.2 is what Anthropic is paying for the ones that they want, the ones that they need. And then if you take a look at what's going on at Palantir, is that we have a client that's about it's a very large financial services company, and they're buying Palantir. They're not using, this is what the CTO told me. They're not using their agents. They're not using their foundry. They're only spending tens of millions of dollars annually on Palantir to access their FDEs. Now, Palantir pays them about around 600,000 in base and bonus plus equity, which I think must get them the same place that where Anthropic is paying them. And they are able to, and what's happening with Palantir is that there's this they actually charge about 2 million a year for these FDEs. Now, what that means is that those are really the only people, and they come in different titles, that are actually making a difference, meaning they're actually making an impact on ROI. So everybody's looking for them. Now, I know that we discovered this within a PE firm, and that was kind of interesting. And JC, maybe you can talk about it. We were expecting that the PE firm was going to tell us about an SVP of AI or something that they needed as an operating partner. What did they actually tell us?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry, I'm trying to
Sure.
help.
This is about Sumeru. So I'm asking you, we thought we were going to, this is like the first company, PE company, and we can go into PE on itself, that said that they're looking for an FDE, like a VP or FDE level person, as opposed to an SVP of AI, which is what we thought. So, JC, I think you can shed some light here. I thought it was an interesting dynamic. You and I were both on a call with a managing partner of a very large PE firm, and we thought we were going to be talking about like a VP of AI or an SVP of AI or an AI operating partner. But what did this managing partner actually want?
So he wanted what a lot of companies are looking for, which is someone to actually do the work as a basically forward deployed engineer, someone who's very competent with AI. They are an applied AI expert themselves, and they're able to ship very quickly workflows that can help internal operations for the most part, and in some cases, external facing parties. But in this case, for this fund, he was looking for someone that he could work with day to day to automate a lot of the operations internally.
And he was using the word FDE, and that was the first time actually that we heard that with this goes back, I don't know, about a month ago. And he was using FDE. Now, we also have run into companies, large Fortune 500 companies, where someone, the CTO in charge of this work, had never heard of an FDE and is not aware of. And most people, when we first started talking to them about over the last few weeks or last 3 weeks or so about what's going on in Anthropic with the Blackstone deal that they call fractional AI, it doesn't really have a name. It's referred to as fractional AI, this $1.5 billion funded company. And so we assume they're going to do the same thing that Palantir does, which is meaning renting out their FDEs, which is actually what these frontier model companies are doing. They built the models. Then they need to be, people are then build agents, and then they use those agents to automate complex workflows. Well, what I just said about after the large language models is everything that an FDE does. And so they either can do it within Anthropic, and you have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars to access them and buy their whole suite of products, or you have to figure out how to get this done internally. and and people are moving very quickly to get this done. Troy, now I know, JC, that the FDE comes in many different forms, and you are doing a number of stand-ups of what you're calling AI native builder stand-ups. And I've also heard you talk about it as agentic ROI stand-ups. Tell us about the one that you're doing right now in New York City, and what do they call this person?
So yes, we are doing a variety of these AI builder stand-ups at the moment. Right now, for the company that's quite large in New York City, they effectively call this person a applied AI engineer. And what that means in this particular case is somebody that can work throughout the day, but also meet with top clients at night, perhaps at dinner, and build prototypes for their needs on the fly with great domain expertise layered on top of that.
Yeah,
Are you seeing
and
anything else in that category, Jeff?
well, yeah, and a lot of this I've learned from you, and that what these people are doing is that, and what their skill sets are. So who can be? Let's talk about that. Who can be an FDE? What allows you to make 800 to 1.2 million? And I might even say that all the ex-Palantir people that were in these roles, most of them are in the C-suite in some of the hottest frontier model companies and AI companies, or they're in SVP type roles, running teams that are doing deployments. So that experience allows you to move very quickly in your career. So I'm sure there's many people that are listening today that would love to be a an FDE, an elite FDE that can drive significant ROI. So what is it that they have? What is that skill set? And that skill set is the same thing as JC was talking about the New York City company. It's the same skill set. They have to understand the business processes of the business, the sector. It's consumer packaged goods. It is financial services. It's certain niches within manufacturing. It's certain niches within software. And that's because they have to have the business knowledge of how processes work within a particular sector. Next, they need to have this deep ability to build models. They have to build agents. They have to build automated workflows and deploy them live. So the motion that is important, whether they're internally facing for efficiency or externally facing for revenue, is this ability to sit down with a tablet and start building agents that lead to major automations in workflows, agentic automation workflows. And so that's one skill. But then the other skill set is the business gravitas to work with engineers all the way up to CEOs to be able to interact, because you have to in order to get this stuff going. You've got to get money from the board and the CEOs to be able to do the deployments and to do the hiring. And so this is what someone must have. And what does that mean? So that means that they've probably already had maybe 20 useless cases and 20 useful cases, meaning that they have a lot of battle scars around what doesn't work and what does work, and they've got instincts about where to deploy first. And they have a natural inclination to go to do it themselves, because that's their job, as opposed to working with a consulting firm, which is struggling themselves to get this talent to interact with them as a client anyway. They can get their work done. Most of the consulting firms are getting their work done in India and Eastern Europe, meaning who's actually building out these agents. But the shortage of FDEs mean that there's like no one has this. They don't have enough of them, particularly when someone's asking about ex-Palantir ones, because there's very few of them. So what's going on in this market? What's happened is that the pace of transformation having to do with agentic AI has collapsed. So what used to take 3 years now takes 3 months. So, and we're seeing change. I was talking yesterday to the CEO of one of the hottest frontier model companies. They just got funding at a $2 billion valuation, but they just closed that, and they're writing the term sheet for a $30 billion valuation. And he was telling me that their demand for talent is so great because everything changes in the large language model world in 6 months. And I think it's actually, again, getting down to that 3 month period of time. But in his window, it's 6 months. Everything changes. And then they need a new set of leadership to drive that change. Not leadership, but a very deep individual technical talent. So what does that mean to every corporation in America? That means that if you don't act now, you're going to get passed by. You could become irrelevant. And how do you defend yourself against that? You defend yourself against that by having the muscle that can drive ROI fast, not having to work with IT consulting firms, not having to spend, tens of twenties and hundreds of millions of dollars with Anthropic, OpenAI, or Palantir, but having that muscle internally. And that can create significant revenue. And so almost all companies, let's say in software, can wrap their products around this FDE, this elite FDE that can meet with customers, knows their business processes, and has this tremendous appetite for being able to drive agentic AI and to start making impact themselves. So all companies, and we're seeing this, our clients are doing this. We have a client, as JC mentioned, in New York City that has these, what they're senior principal AI engineers, but they're really FDEs. They're sitting down with their customers, CIOs of very, very large corporations, and building agents with them, leading to automated workflows. That interaction right there, whether it's internal or external, is what every company needs. So if you want to know what you do now, that's what you do. You don't need, you can call them an SVP of AI. You can call them a chief AI officer. It doesn't matter really. I mean, you have to get the compensation is what matters. The individual contributors of the elite FDE or deployment experts is 800 to 1.2 million. The leaders of those people are even greater. So that's what I would suggest everybody do.
Great. Well,
Okay.
thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today and discuss all of these topics on AI transformation. We appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode of the Christian and Timbers AI Builders podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, JC.